Hey there folks, so in a lot of videos, I ask you guys in the comments to suggest videos that you'd like me to do, or ideas that you have that you'd like to see on the channel. So I have a video here that was suggested by Nosretro Gamer. If you have not checked out his channel, go check it out. I will put a link down in the comments or in the description below. But he wanted to know, since I was getting a European SNES Classic, what the differences were between the European one and the American one. So I went ahead and got both. I have a American Super Nintendo Classic here, and then a European Super Nintendo Classic Mini here. And he knew that I was getting this. I pre-ordered it when they first came out because, to be honest, this is the better one. I like this version better. I think it looks better. I think it looks cooler. And ours, I feel like, is just kind of boring. Now, I do have the original right there. You can see it. But honestly, I like this one better, and I like the way this one looked better growing up as well. So anyways, I got this one, but he just suggested that I try to hunt down an American one as well and do a comparison video about it. So that's what we're doing today. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to start out with the easy stuff, the stuff that should be the same no matter what it is. We're going to start out with what is in the actual box. Now, there's tons of unboxing videos online if you want to see what the actual packaging looks like. Basically, it's just the outer cardboard shell, which is this with the artwork, and then it's just basically something that looks a lot like this. It's basically just a packaged enclosure. This is pretty much the exact same thing, but what we're interested in is what's inside it. So we're going to look at the outside stuff first, and then later on I'll go in and I'll look at the software and see what's different in there. You got your paperwork here, and the interesting thing about the paperwork is it's actually different for both. If I can actually get this to come out of here. Basically, if you were to buy it in the US, you would get, there's a little warranty card in there, but you would get this, and this is basically a fold-out instruction thing. That's a technical term, instruction thing, with a really cool Super Nintendo poster on the back, which is pretty sweet. I like this thing. So, if you guys can't see it, I will put it up pretty close. With basically, it's like one of those old Nintendo Power posters you would get with all the games on it, like that. So that's pretty sweet. And then the instructions are on the back. And I do like this thing. This is really cool. This is the American version. If I can get this back in the thing. Now it's back in the package. But the European one looks a bit different. Now, there's pluses and minuses. The European one did not come with that snazzy poster, but the instruction manual is actually way cooler. And it's got all these different languages on it too, but there's the artwork, and that's basically the artwork that would have been on the Japanese one as well. So, basically, there's no poster. This is all just instructions, and it's the same instructions that you would have gotten here, except here you get a poster. So, what's the difference between the US and American one here? The American one, you get a sweet poster that you can put on the wall or whatever. To be honest, I like to keep things like this minty. So I probably wouldn't have put it on the wall anyway, unless it was in a frame. But the you get no instruction booklet otherwise, and no other artwork. If you get the European one, you get this, which is basically an instruction manual. But hey, the picture on the front is cooler. So what's the difference? Honestly, I think if I were to pick one in the paperwork department, I think the North American one would win out, personally. Because the poster is cooler. Even though I like the artwork better, I mean, you get a poster with this, which is pretty sweet. Now, the other thing that I did not get in mine, which I was kind of surprised about, which maybe I'm just not finding it, but the European one came with a My Nintendo Points redemption code. The American one did not, so keep that in mind. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's another way to get my Nintendo points, but it wasn't in the package, so that's something to think about. Next, we're going to talk about what the other stuff in the package is, the cables. So both of them came with an identical HDMI cable that looks like this. Now that's pretty standard. It says HDMI on it, as it would, and it's black and it's gray and it's an HDMI cable. So that's pretty much all that is. They also both come with a USB power adapter. Now the power adapter for this is regular USB on one side, And then it is a micro USB on the other side. I don't know if you guys can see that right there, but it's a micro USB. Now, the cool thing about this is I actually power mine from the service port on the back of my TV. I just plug this into there, plug the other end into the SNES Classic, and it works without me having to use a wall wart adapter, which is pretty sweet. But there's the big difference. The American one comes with this. This plugs into this, which allows you to plug it into an outlet. The European one does not come with one of these. That might be a deal breaker for some people if you're looking at one or the other, because a lot of people do like having these little chargers, these little wall warts. So that's something to think about. If you want to be able to plug this into a power strip, into a traditional outlet, you need to get the American one. Otherwise, you're going to only be stuck with this. And I'm sure that you could use another wall wart adapter on this thing. I'm sure it would work just fine. But the Super Nintendo Classic uses so little power, you need to make sure that the adapter was compatible, that you're not going to blow up the system. So that's something you need to think about. And in the battle of the cables that actually come with it, the pack-ins, I would say the American one wins because you got this thing. I don't understand why you wouldn't have been able to, why it would have cost more for Nintendo to put one of these in the European one, obviously with European plugs. But anyways, the American one has one, the European one does not. So in terms of pack-ins, I think the American one wins there too. So right now the American one is 2-0. And we're getting ready to get into the stuff that's really subjective. But that said, let's take a look at the controllers. So we've got the American SNES Classic controller, and we've got the European SNES Classic controller. Now, both of these are very similar. The clamshells, I'm pretty sure, are the exact same plastic mold because the texture feels exactly the same. The American one may feel slightly smoother. Oops, there goes the American one. But they've got the same buttons. However, if you grew up in America, you are used to the Y and the X being concave. That means they're sunk in a little bit. And on the European one, they're not. They're all convex. They're all like bubbly on the top, which is normal for a lot of buttons. But in America, we got our X and Y buttons concave. And I really like that. If you're feeling around for controllers, X and Y feel different than A and B. And that makes it really easy, especially for somebody new, to start learning what the buttons are and where they go. On the, whatever it is, the other one, they are not. They are just bubbly, and that's it. Now, as far as clickiness, like I said, the American one feels a little clickier to me, but that might just be because I haven't really used it as much. So that could be that too. Also, you get the different logo. You get the little clover-looking logo. On this one, you get nothing. On this one, it's just the Super Nintendo. They both use the Wii. That Wii remote plug. It's got a name, but I don't actually know what it is. So you can plug it into a Wii remote and use it and that sort of thing. And the cords are way longer than the NES cords. Now, I think that the cords actually still could be a little longer yet, but they're way longer, and you know what? Any improvement is a good improvement. So both cords, same length between the European and the American one. So if you're interested in that, that's a non-factor because they're both the same. Which one wins? Well, it depends on what you grew up with. I think this one wins personally just because I like the aesthetic look of it. And the button shape doesn't really bother me at all. But if you grew up with this, and I did grow up with this, and you got used to it, I mean, the convex button thing might be a thing for you. So if you're used to that controller, the American one is kind of the way to go. If you have an old SNES, you could always get an adapter, like a Hyperkin adapter or something like that. Use your old controller on the SNES Mini. But like I said, this one, it's a toss-up. Depends on what you're used to. I like this one better because the convexness, or the concave, I can't talk. The shape of the buttons doesn't bother me. So I like this one better because I think it looks better. If the shape of the buttons is important to you, this is your only option. Make sure you get the Super Nintendo Classic from America. All right, and now to the hardware itself. As far as these are concerned, they look pretty much exactly like their original counterparts. That's not really an issue. There are some size differences here. If you line these up, they're about the same length. I mean, maybe there's the American one is a millimeter or so longer. But if you line them up side by side, you can see the American one is actually slightly wider than the European one. So if space is an issue for you, if that's something that you want to think about, that is something to keep in mind that could cause some problems. The controller ports are in the front here. And so you can see there's not a whole lot of difference between these two. This one has the European one has just a little bit less space in there maybe, but it doesn't really matter because it's definitely enough for the controllers to fit in there. And that's pretty much it for that. They both open up from the bottom here, and then they're just those little flaps. They're kind of ugly, to be honest, but that's okay. As far as the buttons go, they work like their original counterparts did. With the Super Nintendo, the power button flips up like that and flips down to power it off. And the reset button just pops up and down like that. On the European one, the power button flips up like that, and then you just have a reset button right there, which is actually a press button, not a flip button. To be honest, this feels more substantial to me than this. I don't know if it's just how they have this button pushed on or something like that, but this feels a little flimsier to me. When I feel like this should be the better one because it's bigger. So I don't know if there's only like one contact point in the middle and it just feels a little flimsy. That's just something to think about. The eject button doesn't do anything. The cartridge slot doesn't do anything. And that's the same across both. So cartridge slot, eject button. The LED is right here on the European one. It's on the top. On the American one, it's on the front. And actually, I like it on the front better. The top one, that being on the top is kind of annoying, but that's kind of it. Other than that, same ports on the back, exact same ports. And I've interchanged the cables. The cables work on either one. It doesn't really matter. They're just general cables. So those are the two systems themselves. And now it's time to look at the software itself. So there's a few minor differences here as well. And I'm going to switch over to the computer so you guys can actually see them in real time as I capture them on my Elgato. So here we go. Okay, so yeah, so this is the American version of the Super Nintendo Classics menu. You'll notice the dark gray, bluish gray, whatever that is, background there. You got the bottom part there that looks like the American Super Nintendo with the purple and the gray, and overall, yeah, this is pretty much what it looks like. Also, the American box art, which I'll make a note about when we get to the European one. But so we're gonna go up here to the display settings and see. This is pretty much the same between both models, I found, including the frames down there. It doesn't seem like that the European one had any ones that the Super Nintendo American one didn't. And there's the one with the little the European logo on it. And then you got the options. So you got the demo here, where Mario comes and he right there he's gonna hit Star Fox 2, and you see I've already got a save state there. I'll talk about that save state window here in just a second. But there's Star Fox 2. It's Star Fox 2. It's doing its Star Fox 2 thing. Yeah, and that's about it for that. And then, yeah, here we go. We're back to the menu. So we're going to go back up here. Language. Those are all the languages you can have. The legal notices are the same. Manuals are the same. Really, it's a pretty the same experience for the most part, except for this suspend point list. So you notice that looks like a Super Nintendo cartridge. And so here we are at the PAL version. The first thing you'll notice is the background is way more colorful, which actually I like aesthetically better. I know some people probably aren't going to like that as much. But, you know, the whole thing is styled after the European and Japanese version of the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom. It's pretty much what it looks like. So it's supposed to look like. The Mario demo here will just start in just a second. Yeah, there it goes. And then he just pops up there and it plays the game. Looks like this is Secret of Mana. We'll let it play through for just a second and then we'll pop off of it and come back over. But yeah, basically the entire aesthetic is of the PAL version, and really there's not a whole lot of other difference. We're going to go through all the settings just so you can see. And here we go. We're getting ready to pop back in just a second. And there it is. So now we're back. And the one interesting thing to notice is the box art is American, even though this is the European system. And so we've got the picture settings here, which is, you know, basically again the same. Like I said, there's no frames that ended up being unique between the two, which I was kind of hoping for. I was a little disappointed about that. If, you know, it would have been nice to at least have one unique frame. But anyways, there they are. You know, you got lots of frames that you can put around your game. Again, you got the same options menu right there, demo, burn-in reduction, all that stuff. Again, same thing as the American one. Mario just tried to start demoing on me there. But, you know, you got your languages, your legal notice, all this boring stuff. And your manuals, which, QR code, man. That's what you do for manuals these days, I guess. And that's about it. Now, the suspend point list here, again, is probably the biggest aesthetic difference. This looks like a European Super Nintendo cart or Super Famicom cart. And yeah, so there you go. So now you got the box art. And again, the box art is the American box art, not the European box art, which I found to be pretty strange. I'm not really sure why that is. But anyways, there you go. So that's the main differences between the two. I'll do a side-by-side here just so you can see. And now a side-by-side of the save state menu. And that's about it. So yeah, we're gonna go back to me on the camera. Okay, so there it is, the Super Nintendo Mini Classic, the Super Nintendo Classic Mini versus the Super Nintendo Classic, the European versus the American. And that's pretty much it. There's not a ton of difference between these two. It just comes down to personal preference. For me, the European one wins out just because I think it's cooler. For a lot of people, I think this one's going to win out too because of the shape of the buttons and the fact you get that that power adapter in it. And then other than that, it's just aesthetic. It's just, do you like the way the European one looks better? Do you like the way the American one looks better? Either one's fine, but now at least you know the differences between the two. Both of these things are becoming way easier to find, which is awesome. And Nintendo seems to be making good on their promise to make a ton of them. They are still selling out pretty consistently and pretty quickly whenever someone gets them in stock. But if you follow some in-stock trackers, if you pay attention to what's going on around you, I would bet you can get one. Scalpers are still trying. They're trying their hardest to buy all these things up, and it's gonna bite them here eventually. So I'm really glad that Nintendo's making more. Really glad that more people are getting their opportunity to actually get their hands on one of these things. In my experience so far and just what I've seen online, the European one seems like it might be a little easier to get than the Super Nintendo one, but if you're in the States, you're gonna have to pay just a little bit extra to get it shipped here and all that other stuff. So that's about it. I just wanted to give you guys some information. So thank you so much to Nosretro Gamer for making this the suggestion for me to make this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, then mash that like button, and if you haven't subscribed, then I'd really appreciate it if you did. So that's about all I got for you guys. I'll see you guys later.